I love this idea of clear your head. I think when you work with leaders, and I know what happens is they're lost in the weeds, and that becomes after a while pretty overwhelming and kind of discouraging. And when you work with these people, sometimes I call it throwing them a rope, right? You just throw them a
Yes.
rope, pull them up, let them look around. They re-energize when they look around, and then you can, they climb back down and they start. You still have to do the day to day. It's not like that goes away.
Absolutely. And that is the trick, is to be able to do both. But what we have found is you're not giving up, 50% of your effort on the here and now and the executing and operating of the core business, but you are trying to carve out 10%, say, and maybe in a extreme example, 20%, but carving out the time and the space to be able to put this strategic way of thinking to the test in a real powerful way. We have found over and over, not only prepares you for the future, but it also interpenetrates the present and has implications for the way that you manage the day to day on the core operations.
So how do you work with leaders who are have all these opportunities in front of them? They're entrepreneurial, visionary. They haven't seen an idea that they can't fall in love with. They chase this, they chase that, whatever. How do you work with leaders and develop this future back thinking approach?
Well, first, in working with leaders, we got to start with giving them a common language and a common way to think about things. And so one is making the case for the importance of managing not just the short term and the long term, and that there's a way that long term thinking should develop and a process for doing it. And so we need to give them a language and a vocabulary. That present forward is about taking the business and moving it forward in time. Future back's about clean sheet, thinking in a new way. So anyway, start with the language, introduce them to the process, which, as you mentioned earlier, is to go into the future, bring that alive, that 5 to 10 year horizon, through developing a vision, and then being able to convert that to a strategy, how you accomplish getting to that vision, not just in the short term, but over time. And then how do you ultimately implement that? And so bringing leaders along would be, first, give them the language and the way of thinking. Second, demonstrate by actually going through a process to identify a future's time horizon and its growth gap. And then third, beginning to think through some cultural or behavioral changes that the leadership team needs to make that an ongoing effort of being able to manage the long term and the short term.
Right. Starting with the individual is what I mean, maybe
Yes.
my question focused you there, but you start with the individual, kind of get this ball rolling. But in the end, it doesn't matter how much just one person thinks. You have to impact everybody else too.
Yes, absolutely.
Right. Right.